Hello, friends. Today I had to travel for work, so we had about a 3.5 hour drive round trip there and back, and we just had an ice storm come through, so the roads have been pretty risky, and I haven't driven by myself from my new home here, my new happy home, the Salo Mason happy home here in Gibbon, Minnesota, to the cities. And it was in the morning and all this other stuff. So Douglas graciously offered to drive me, which is wonderful. I love the company, and he's a good driver, great driver, and he makes me feel safe, and I like that. And we always talk about just anything that comes to mind. And today we were talking about something, and I got to, one thought leads to another, how they say, right? Well, I was telling him that I had listened to the Senate hearing committee that was taking testimony from the director of FEMA regarding their actions and their process following Hurricane Milton. So one of the things that was brought up that I thought was interesting was there was a senator there. She was a very old woman, and I don't realize, I realize I don't recognize her. I'm not sure who she is. But she said that after Hurricane Milton, that she herself went directly to North Carolina and was boots on the ground, knocking on doors, asking people what they needed for assistance and help. And I thought that was brave and noble for a senator to be willing to do that. And I also thought that it was a great show of compassion, and I commend her for that. But she said something interesting, and it brought me to another thought, which brought me to another thought. And she said that her concern about FEMA was that she sat down with one family on the ruins of their house. It was left of their life. And they were on a computer, and they were able to get a signal. So they were trying to go online and get registered for FEMA services online. And when they got to the number that had been provided by FEMA for that purpose, she said that she timed them, and they spent the first 28 minutes being on that phone call of FEMA advertising how great they are, fantastic they are, wonderful they are, patting themselves on the back, pious and polishing their halos. 28 minutes of this infomercial garbage. She was offended by that because these people, their lives are gone. They need to start over, and they have to spend 28 valuable minutes listening to nonsense and propaganda. They don't care about that. It's not a priority. But when they finally got to the system, it was so complicated and so difficult to navigate, especially because, internet signals and power and stuff has been, pretty dicey for these people. And when you get a signal, you gotta run with it. So they had some problems. And ultimately, by the time they got through over an hour, struggling, the whole family, including the senator, struggling to figure this out, they couldn't get the services. They couldn't get approved for services because they couldn't figure out the system. And that is super hugely important, because all lines of government have this issue. Government bodies have their own compartmentalized verbiage, language, culture, and anyone that does not work in that particular department, agency, office, whatever, they're not going to know. It's like taking an American and dropping them in the rainforest and having them find the first sign of civilization and expecting them to be able to communicate with them. It's not going to happen. And I think part of part of what's happened is that government, of course, has become extremely complicated. And yeah, there's a lot of bureaucracy, there's a lot of red tape, there's a lot of waste and different things. But I'm hoping that the new administration will address the dire need to simplify our government in a way, and I'm not being insulting here, but to dumb it down so that average Americans of any level of intellect and capability can understand what they're saying, navigate their systems. When you apply for Social Security disability benefits and you need an attorney to do that because you can't figure out the system because it's so complicated, what does that tell you about that system? And what does that tell you about politicians? What does it tell you about government workers? When you're the one that has the information and you're the one with the knowledge and ability to translate and navigate and work through these systems, whether it be a complicated letter you get in the mail or a phone call, you get stuck in automation or whatever. There's a real level of egotism here because they're holding all the cards. They're in control. And they can lie and manipulate you because they know that you don't speak their language. So they can grift you, 7 ways to Sunday. Why? Because you don't know the language. And this is so important because in my line of work, in my industry, which is the judicial industry, sometimes clerks tend to forget or, just not understanding. When an average person comes to the counter and they're trying to file a case or they have questions about their case or they need help navigating the court system, the clerks will start rattling off court speak, government language, our verbiage, our cultural interpretation, forgetting that the average person on the other side of that counter or on that phone does not understand what you're saying. So what that does is that leads to frustration. It leads to people not wanting to utilize the courts, which is their right. It's their court. We belong to the taxpayers of Minnesota. It gets them angry. It gets them frustrated. They give up. They miss things. They miss a box that didn't get checked. They forgot to sign a document because they didn't understand it. It is incredibly important that governments now start from the top down and simplify it. People should not have to spend hundreds or even thousands of dollars for a CPA or an accounting firm to do your basic taxes when all you have is one fucking W-2 form. And you get a 30-page document of all this tax speak, this IRS nonsense garbage. Same thing. That's why they give you this packet when you're done and they have highlighted where you're supposed to sign. They don't want you reading it. You couldn't read it anyway. Have you ever read your insurance policy? I want you to pull up one of your insurance policies, your auto insurance policy, and I want you to read it. And I'm not talking just the basic numbers on the front page, which is like, oh yeah, this is all I need. I want you to read the whole damn thing. Because they are this thick and they are full of language that nobody but an insurance agent can possibly understand. Same thing with real estate. How many dozens of pages does it take to buy a house? It's unacceptable. All of these agencies, all of these entities, they have created a culture of inaccessibility from the very people that need these services, that need to understand the IRS, that need to understand how to buy a house, that need support from the courts. This is super important. We should get a petition. Hey, cuz, you think we should get a petition? We should get a petition about, streamlining the language and the verbiage. They got to do something. Because part of the reason that no one trusts the government is because the government sits behind closed doors, guarding their information, your information, getting a thrill off of knowing that you don't know what's going on, you don't understand, and that you have to go to them for all of the answers, that you have to seek them out. Part of being a free American is having the freedom to make choices based on knowledge, based on available knowledge. And as long as the government continues to keep us out of the loop, they will be in charge. They will have the upper hand. That's why so many politicians are control freaks. Oh, they love it. That's why so many snotty politicians like Pelosi and, AOC and Ilhan Omar, that's why they're so snotty. Because they think they're better than everybody. Because they have all the access to all the knowledge of how to live an everyday life in America. And they know that you don't. Politicians are chosen by the free people to go and assert their agenda. That's their job. It's not their job to make a career out of being a politician. It is not their job to withhold information or access to information, but that's what they do. The Federal Information Act. Do you know that 9 times out of 10, no matter what you're asking for, you're going to get rejected? Not just journalists, but people that are looking for information about their cases, about things that have happened. You can't look it up. The federal government holds that information like there's some, like they're the Akashic records that spiritualists talk about. They guard it like it's theirs and nobody else's, and they can control it. Shame on them. That's not true. That is our information. We have a right to that information. So, it really kind of chapped my cheeks. Because the more I thought about it, the more fumey I got. And I thought, well, I certainly don't do that. When I encounter a court user, stakeholder, litigant, I talk to them in human language. I sit down with them. I explain everything step by step. And I don't talk to them in court speak. I talk to them like one person to another person trying to figure out this document, trying to navigate this issue. Because that's what you have to do. I am a government worker. I work for politicians. Judges are politicians. They have to be voted into their offices. They have to be vetted. They have agendas. I work for politicians. But I will never let one politician tell me that I can't embrace an average Joe working stiff coming to the counter who's just trying to get his $600 back from the asshole that borrowed it and never paid it back. I won't do it. And until next time, just be good and do good.